Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Evening Jones. Like I put my arrow on the screen somewhere to make the Evening Jones thing come up and then I move it. So like I'm gonna tell you that I'm about to do that and then you do it yourself and then you can see my fingers hold over. See? All right. Now, if you're watching at theethanjones.com, what I need you to do is to log in. Twitter profile, Facebook profile, whatever kind of profile you got, go ahead and use it. Once you do that, you can participate in our chat room. You can also send in your questions. You can type out your questions. I put them up on the screen the relative old-fashioned way, given the medium. Or if you got a webcam and headphones, like I got a webcam and headphones, then you can ask your question live, though I do have to be somewhat honest with you. We really only take with so many of y'all with these live questions because the internet connections be out here all wobbly. And quite honestly, I never had any idea which one of y'all going to say the thing that like legitimately caused me a problem. And we don't need that. Anyway, Christmas is around the corner. I say Merry Christmas if Christmas is your bag. If it's not, it's whatever. I live in Miami. So when you go by the front desk of my building, they got the joint for Hanukkah. You know, the one that looked like the joint for Kwanzaa with the candles. Yeah, they got that there. Like, just so you know, it's a big old Christmas tree over there. They got that on the counter. It's like a real multicultural happy holiday sort of affair in Miami because it just kind of got to be. You know what I mean? One thing about it, though, with Christmas, I don't remember if I've talked about it on this here program, but it's a thought. I've discussed this with people. It's very interesting how kind of the mainstream interpretation of Christmas and paradigm of what is considered to be traditional is entirely based upon a climate that has never been native to me. Right? Like all the stuff that you supposedly do at Christmas, like make a snowman and everything else. Y'all realize y'all making some of us feel left out? Like the whole paradigm that you got at Christmas is of living in these cold weather places. And some of us was doing better than that. You know what I mean? But we don't really have no traditional Christmas stuff that we can point to like that. Like the folks in California, they need to make songs about going to the beach at Christmas. That's what they often do is go to the beach at Christmas. Why not? The weather's good enough to go to the beach. You might as well go to the beach. Merry Christmas, right? People are like, man, that don't feel like Christmas. But I'm from Houston. Christmas don't feel like making no damn snowman. Right? We don't know nothing about that. And so you just kind of squeeze us out in a lot of ways and make our Christmases subsequently feel as though they are lesser because they don't have the scourge of cold weather. But I readily admit, like, it's cool to have like Christmas in the 60s or something like that. But when you got your Christmas sweater that you've been ready to rock, and then next thing you know, you sweating in that thing, you then kind of be like, yo, it don't even feel like Christmas out here. That's what it is. If you do not celebrate Christmas, I hate that you feel left out in that situation. One thing I think is interesting that people believe that there's some war on Christmas out here, and there absolutely is not a war on Christmas. But I find myself in an interesting place in this idea of like the war on Christmas because I am a non-religious person who happens to really like Christmas, right? So the people who typically get on this, there's a war on Christmas, are doing that in defense of their right to like put all day Christian on you. Just like wrap their arms around you and smother you with the blood of Jesus Christ. Like that, like those tend to be the people that are like defending the right to celebrate Christmas in public. And I'm like, I understand the whole notion of happy holidays. There's no reason to leave anybody out. But like, I've never met anybody in this world who was offended by somebody saying Merry Christmas to them. Like, I think there are people who are offended by the idea that you are forcing, like you're normalizing Christmas in a certain way. But I've never met anybody that was like ready to scream and fight and cuss somebody out over you saying Merry Christmas to them, right? Like people don't appreciate the goodwill to it. Like, it's like when people tell me they're going to pray for me. I'm not mad at anybody saying that they're going to pray for me. Like, I appreciate it because they mean well, you know? Like I tell my Jewish friends Merry Christmas because they mean well, you know? And if they want to tell me Happy Hanukkah, I'd take it. Wouldn't be no beef. Anyway, Christmas around the corner. Warm weather Christmases matter too. Yeah, there we go. All right. Let me see what we got here for your questions. You know, I've got to say, okay. I think somebody kind of got to it in the crassest way possible. I can't put that on the screen like I want to. Like, that's a question that I want to answer. But my man, I can't really. I mean, you ain't got to get in my pocket. You understand what I'm saying? You ain't got to get in my pocket in order to do this. Okay? My man put it like this. Congrats on the bread increase. And I'm like, they ain't tell you nothing about no bread increase. Like, let me tell you something that you do need to know about this game that I'm in. Just because you signed a contract doesn't mean that you got a raise. You understand what I'm saying? Like this ain't really like professional sports in that sense where you think of somebody getting an extension and then they get more bread. Nah. So like, let's be careful here. Let's be careful. You don't know what's going on in my pockets. But that being said, you may have seen this, but my employers put out a press release, and I signed a contract extension with the good folks at ESPN, right? That was cool. I realized something like a couple of weeks ago that the current like job that I have, which and I think highly questionable is my primary gig. The current job that I have, I've worked that twice as long as I have ever worked a job. Like, the idea of like being in the same place for this long a time is kind of brand new to your boy. Like, I started doing Around the Horn 6 years ago. Like, I think that seems kind of crazy to consider in a lot of ways because that's a fast 6 years that ran by. But I started doing Around the Horn 6 years ago. Like, I was thinking about this, the radio show I used to do, like the one I was doing in North Carolina, 3-hour lunch break, the midday show. Yo, man, that was 7 years ago. Like, I used to write for Page 2. Yo, man, I left there 9 years ago. Like, a whole lot of this time is like kind of burned, and it was a whole lot of doing a bunch of different stuff. Hop here, hop there, go to this place, go to that place, whatever it is. I haven't been at a place anywhere this long, and I don't know how long. And I got a contract extension here, and I was thinking about it. I was about to say it's the first time I got a contract extension, but that's not really true because I got a contract extension from the Score. And that was the first time I got a contract extension. I had a 1-year contract, and then they gave me an extension on that next contract, and they like tore the contract up that I had and gave me a new one. Like, I felt like a boss. And then before that contract ran out, place kind of went out of business. Like, the whole Score didn't go out of business, but the part of the Score that I worked at just kind of like went away. So yeah, the contract was extended, but gone. So this time they signed me up to, and they called it in the press release, a multi-year extension. See, I look in the press release, and this is very important. You look at the press release to make sure that you don't say nothing that you're not allowed to say. Right? Like, you get caught out somewhere and you get to rambling or whatever it is. No. I looked at that press release. I was like, oh, so these are the things that we're talking about. Okay, cool. I can stay within the parameters of these things that we are going to talk about. From reading that press release, the parameters of what we're going to talk about is I signed a contract extension. Scene. That's it. This I can tell you, though. And I feel like this is a conversation. I say this like not rarely on this podcast, but I feel like the people who listen to this podcast are probably people who, by and large, are probably people that feel like a closer attachment to me and the work that I do. People who've been following for a while. Like, I know we pick up new people on this podcast, man, but there's a lot of people that have gone back a long time with me. And when I started doing this, I was doing work at smaller outlets, and I was also like, when you're doing things at smaller outlets and you're doing them on a smaller scale, you can have more intimate venues for certain levels of conversation. Like, I think this podcast is an example of a more intimate sort of venue for these things. And so I think that if you watch me on television or hear me on the radio, you probably hear me in a somewhat different way on this podcast, because I feel a closeness on this that I don't feel in these other places. Like, I do feel like it's a different, like, we got a different thing that goes on here. Like, if you watch it on ESPN, that's cool, but there's a good chance that you're probably watching because it's ESPN, listening because it's ESPN radio. Like, if you hear because it's me. And so I say to the people who would be here and feel as such, I give, again, a sincere thank you. And I say a sincere thank you because, like, I worked at ESPN at ESPN.com back in the day. I had a 1-year contract. That contract was not extended. It was not renewed. I was 27 years old. And at that point or moment or whatever, I was just like, okay, well, I had my chance at this ESPN thing and it didn't happen. Like, I may really get something cracking somewhere, but like, it's never really going to get cracking there. Like, that's not what it's going to be. And I don't think I had ever, because I don't know exactly what my ambitions were at that time, like looking back on it. But I never had any point in my career or anything where I felt like I was comporting myself in a certain way to try to like be accessible to do something large, right? Never really that. I think I was probably a bit more risk averse, but nah, like I never had that. But at the same time, I operated on this belief that I was not going to get like to the show in that way. And that if I wasn't going to get to the show in that way, that was fine. But there would really be no reason to like make gigantic sacrifices of what kind of work I wanted to do if it wasn't going to end up being like, if it were going to end up at the show. Like, I didn't think there was any reason for that. And so I decided that in this work that I was doing, that I was going to kick it the way that I kick it. Like, that's what I had, right? I might as well just kick it the way I kicked it. And I found my work got a lot better as I was kind of dedicated to kicking it the way that I kicked it. Like, I wanted to try to give kind of a natural conversational approach to doing this stuff, while I think given, you know, the knowledge and things that you hope that somebody has in such a position. But I was like, I'm going to do this the way that I happen to do it. And I was doing it off Broadway. It's no big deal, right? But I did it on the radio in the Triangle, the Raleigh-Durham area, and it worked. And it worked in a way that I don't think that most people expected it to work, which was a whole lot of people that you might expect would hate my guts because you think that they can't rock with quote unquote somebody like me. Hey man, no, it works. It does. Like, with those cats, it works. The people who feel like some kind of like similarities when they watch me or whatever, like, it's worked. And the thing is, I feel like with a lot of that stuff, it's been a matter of having to demonstrate to people that it would work. Like, the only way to show that I could make it work was to actually make it work. And so with a lot of those things, we made it work, and then somehow like got back to the show. Like, I tell this story about the first time I did Around the Horn. I was like, yo, man, I got two options here. I can approach this and try to do it hoping that they'll call me back, or I can approach this like they're probably never going to call me back anyway, so I might as well do this the way that I do it. And I went with number two, and I've been doing that kind of sort of since, and it has worked in large degree. I guess I'd say all that, and that's a bit roundabout and circuitous, certainly. But like, I do feel like that there are a lot of people, and they're probably in the audience of this particular podcast for the reasons that I said before. But I think there are a lot of people who have like some ideas that they think of, like what kind of content that they would like to see. And they believe that some of this content would work if somebody would just give it a chance. And I've been in these situations where people at the show have been willing to give the chance to demonstrate that this can work. And I think in a lot of ways, it has been demonstrated that it can work. And so for me to kind of have that reaffirmed after a lot of the bouncing around that I've done and the things that people have said and the people and the decisions that they've made and everything else, to kind of have it reaffirmed for me that there's a value, not so much that there's a value in the approach that I feel like I'm taking, but that there's an appreciation for it. You know, like that makes me feel good. Like it legitimately does. It makes you feel good, and I feel like in a lot of ways there's like a measure of accomplishment that comes with it. And a lot of it, of course, is that I've been working with really good, really interesting, and really smart people who have been, who put me in positions where I can do things that I'm fairly good at, right? I mean, there's a bunch of names. Can't really, don't really have time to like get everybody, because if I miss one of them, I'm gonna look like a jackass. But like, it's been a whole lot of people who have been like really good in like making this happen. And look at that. Somebody decided they wanted to keep me working at a place. They are normally one way or another telling me I got to go. Like, even if it was them saying everybody got to go, it was always I got to go. I have never, the last time I walked away from a job because I wanted to, I think was when I quit my job at the Gap in college. Like, that's the last time I walked away from a job, because that's just what I was feeling like. Like, some of y'all be switching jobs all the time. Like, you got your job, you see a new job, you go find a job. I ain't never had that power of just walking in and being like, take this job and shove it. I be in there having to be like, yo, I want to show them what a big man I am. Right? I can take it. Chin up. I've never been in that situation. So, like, this works. And I think there's a lot of people who are in this particular platform who feel like me winning in a lot of ways is them winning. And if you happen to be one of those people, we pulled this off, man. We got to pull this off. Like, you got to think about this. Like, when I was doing the stuff with the score or whatever, like first time I went on First Take and I started getting on around the horn and stuff like that, like, it was almost like, to us, like we'd almost invaded these places. Like, it made no sense that I was there. Like, if you were like listening to Bomani Jones and listening to stuff that we doing in there and the stuff we talk about, and Mike calling 3-4 times a day, Mike calling standing on top of a car because there's a Doberman on the ground and he can't get down. He's asking somebody to hand him a gun so that he can shoot the dog. And then that afternoon, I'm going on ESPN and like I'm carrying a championship belt and I got a pinky ring and all of this stuff. I was 30 years old when I started doing that. Like, I was 30 years old when I started doing that. Like, it was absurd to me and really to us that this was happening at all. Like, it was almost a measure of cognitive dissonance to the idea that that was happening. But we was there. Like, I was there. We was there. We made it in. And we were like really kicking it and enjoying it, being there. And again, I do say we, because this is the way that we was kicking it all the other places that we were. I just happened to be the one of us that was on television, and so then it goes and it wound up getting this, getting on the TV show, the radio show, we get that back. And that was like a real big victory for me and a lot of my folks, because like that radio show, I love those radio shows as much as anything else that I can think of that isn't like, family or, family adjacent, right? Like, I love those shows. It broke my heart each time that we had to quit those radio shows, every single one. Like, I enjoyed doing the YouTube videos, but when that ended, it was just kind of what it was, like it was life. It was just kind of the progression. When those radio shows ended, man, like that hurt. Like, both of them really, really, really hurt when they shut down. Cause like, I felt like I was losing my people. I felt like we were losing like a legitimate, like, this wasn't a job for me, anything else. Like, this was a part of our lives and it was just gone, So when we got back and got the radio show back rolling, the radio show still like ain't exactly where I want it to be. Like, there's some parts that we're working out, and all that stuff like that. But just the mere idea of having it, and we got the phones back ringing, so now we're talking to people again. Like, we're starting to get that feel where it's starting to, starting to sound and starting to feel like all of us again. And so, we got that back going, and all these things like kind of going on together, and like it's gonna keep rolling. It's people out here saying they want me fired every day, and I got an extension. Extension, bruh. Extension. Like, I'm going to be there for some years. Years, I tell you, years. Hey, man, that ain't bad. Like, it is legitimately not bad. And I'm not flashing. I'm not stunting. Like, I want to make sure that you got to understand that. It's not even flashing or stunting. At least not in this moment, it's not. Like, there really is something to be said, kind of, for like stopping and looking around and realizing that for some people who've been with me with this, and some of us, there was a time where we just really could not believe that this was happening. Like the idea, like I remember I got the first email about coming on Around the Horn, and I saw it and I had to go check and make sure everything was what it was. I was like, there's no way this is possible. This can't be happening. Right? Like, no way. Not like none. Not at all. It can't be. Like, it was crazy that this was ever like a thing in the first place. Dude, now I've been doing this like for so long that there's going to be a point where like there's kids that go to college and stuff like that. And if they've been watching ESPN, since they were like 8, 9, 10 years old, and they get into college, like they're not really going to have much of a recollection of a time that I wasn't on there. Like, that's a wild thought, right? I mean, like, that's really, because like one of the things about like doing television, they tell you, like, you do a daily TV show or whatever, it's kind of the repetition that you become, in a way, part of people's lives. And it's not something that you get from like coming in once or twice a week, you bounce around or anything. It's like being in these places consistently and you're there daily, that when they get old or older rather, and they turn like everybody else turns when they're older and everything was better like back in their day, like there's going to be a point on some of this where people are going to be like, yeah, man, you remember, see, they used to have dope shows, man. Like, you remember Highly Questionable, man? Yeah, man, with the old man that was on there. Yeah, they ain't even got nothing that's hot like that no more. Like, there's going to be a time where people are like going to look at stuff that I've done or been a part of, rather, like in that kind of way. And it's kind of continuing, And you got a whole lot of people that's got their various like ESPN criticisms and their belief that ESPN is just kind of just like appealing to the least common denominator. And I mean, I think that there's such a wide variety of stuff at ESPN. Like, I don't really understand how anybody could just say that there's one direction given all the stuff that network puts out. I mean, there's just the range and the number of ways is just too vast to me that you can point to one thing, say that. But hey, look, man, you know what it is that I do. You know how I do it. And I'm pretty transparent about like where the limitations come up and where the lines are drawn and everything else. Like, these things. And they like putting in on it. They're like, yeah, actually, we'll take some more of that. And I'm like, all right, then. Y'all got it. That'll work. I'm cool with that. Like, for real. Like, for real. I'll tell you one thing, though. Y'all gonna need to raise up out my pockets a little bit, though. Like, just a little bit. Like, I understand. I make some jokes about cats that's like dropping fries and stuff like that every now and then. But that's because they hate. You know what I'm saying? Only time I ever did anything that was like anywhere like close to throwing bread in your face is when I showed y'all that I got the car. But at the same time, I feel like, yo, man, everybody, you get a new car, you show when you get a new car, right? I think every damn one of y'all that's in here right now, y'all got a new car, y'all put that thing on Instagram. I don't give a damn what the car was. I don't care if it was hot. Like, you might not have put it up if it was used. But you know damn well you put it up when it was new. And so I put it up. But other than that, I ain't really about to be out here stunting this bread in your face. Since I ain't about to stunt this bread in your face, get your face out of my bread. Like cats like, yeah, man, you got, I see you got a raise. Ain't nobody say nothing about no raise, and all a raise would mean is more than I used to make. You don't know nothing about that. Now, I do feel like it's necessary to a degree for me to be somewhat honest or like somewhat transparent about money. Not entirely, but I don't think like I can't operate from a position of what I consider to be like a caricature, right? So your income and all that stuff has an effect on your worldview and the circles that you're in and stuff like that. And so I have sensibilities that are born of my lifetime, but I'm also in the situation that I'm in. So like there's some measure of transparency that's necessary for you to like understand where I'm coming from. And I can't pretend like I'm still making $43,000 a year working 6 days a week. Like that's not the bottom, to be clear. Like that's not like, oh my God, how poor I was or whatever. I'm not saying it in that way, but like I can't pretend like that's the way I kick it now. Like that's dishonest and disingenuous and looking at the way I look at things. Like I say, my sensibilities are formed by my lifetime, but you got to be honest. Like I get mad in sports, for example, when people start talking about stuff involving agents and they act like totally naive about agents, knowing damn well that they got one. Like if you got bread and you speaking about something about somebody else's bread, you need to give there's a little bit of an explanation you need to give about what kind of bread you got. Because that has an effect on how much you can be trusted, depending upon where you're coming from on these things. But that don't mean you need to get up in my pockets. You know what I'm saying? That don't mean that don't mean you need to be up in my pockets. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Right? Can you hold $5? I tell you this though, you can hold $2. I ain't talking about no dollars though. You can hold $2. But anyway, oh, my man, Brian is the best way. Hit me up and let's build. People love to talk to you about some building, boy. That's the one thing about it, man. People think, came to Supreme for some reason, man. They all about hollering at you to quote unquote build. Yo, man, let's build. And I'm trying to think in retrospect, how often let's build has turned into any actual building. I'm just trying to think, like how many times that any concrete has been poured into this foundation. Because we was talking about we gonna build. But anyway, yeah. Hit me up and let's build. Let's build. Can't hit me up with that and all stuff. Everybody got an idea, man. Like I say, I don't even know who these cats are. They come with the ideas, man. They come and bless their hearts, man. And I ain't even mad at them because look, this is how it works. If you got an idea and you need some bread, you hit up whoever it is that you know who has the bread. Like that's how it works. Like you got to have a certain measure of respect for the game because that's how it goes. But man, yeah, I mean all the construction workers, all the contractors, everybody trying to build. Everybody trying to build. Appreciate the question. Let me see what we got here. What is the black version of fruitcake, the Christmas dish that everybody hates, but somebody always brings to the dinner/party? So, we have had a discussion before on this here program about dancing, right? Like, I wish that I had the confidence on the dance floor that white people have. I typically say at weddings because that's typically the only place I'm really around where white people be dancing. But I guess it's the club and everything else. White folks get out there, do whatever the hell they please. Have the greatest time. Don't care who's looking. Don't care at all who's looking. It does not work that way with my people because we judge on this. I don't know if we are any more judgmental on anything else, but we're really, really judgy on this. You out here dancing or whatever, we evaluating you. Like somebody once said, it's like a job interview. That's real, bro. That's real. I feel like cooking is a very, very similar thing. So I don't know if it's possible for there to be a black version of fruitcake, because if you keep bringing something that everyone hates, you will begin to be told to bring something else, or you will not be invited, or you will be told just to bring cups. But they ain't gonna let you keep bringing something that ain't. Nah, man, them jokes gonna fly. Them jokes gonna fly. And you're gonna learn to err your ways pretty damn quickly. And who knows? Maybe, I don't know. Like, I only say this because I just know the black people that I've been around. Like, I don't know, like, why it's different that people keep bringing the fruitcake even though nobody wants the fruitcake. I just know that anything that somebody's like really repeatedly bringing, unless it's around family and the issue isn't the dish, the issue is that the person just can't cook. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like this all gets weeded out. Appreciate the question. See what else we got here. Damn, some of y'all nosy as hell. Wow, this Cruz Bannister guy got all the questions. How do you feel about Tupac being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Okay, so I find the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to be a very, very interesting thing. One, because people get really caught up in the semantics of the notion of quote unquote rock and roll. That's something that I struggle to separate from the fact that, as nomenclature goes, like rock and roll was there, and then all of a sudden you get this rhythm and blues. Like basically rock and roll has just been totally co-opted by white people. Like white people are, if you are not according to this thing based on this kind of musical art form that we kind of like jumped on board with and then force you guys out of, we're going to call these things rock and roll. And you always get these assholes who pop up and they're like, well, what rock song did Tupac make or whatever it is? Like rock and roll has really become a statement of like what, like post mid 50s pop music. Like, is that fair to say? And I don't see there's anything wrong with that, because I don't really know what other catch-all term that you would use to describe like the aesthetic and branches of said aesthetic that make up what is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? I don't blame them for not changing the name or anything else. I do get bothered by the people who all of a sudden want to get so territorial about what is rock and roll. But you know what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is. So like, stop being a jerk about it. Anyway, if you are going to have one of these halls of fame, then Tupac's in it. There's no way around that. And look, I say this as a person who's not really a Tupac fan. I'm just telling you, Tupac's in it. And the thing about Tupac that I think it's something that gets lost, but something that I think is very important, which is, it doesn't matter how much you like Tupac. Like, you have to be able to look and see the way that people respond to Tupac's music to tell that he absolutely struck on something that was very, very important. One thing I always say about Tupac is I just can't relate to, like, there's a level of anger in Tupac's music that simply does not speak to my experience. Right? And I believe that Tupac would love to have had like the life and upbringing that I did. I got fortunate, but I can't relate to Tupac in ways that a lot of people who really, really love Tupac are able to. Now, as I'm older, like, I have a different appreciation for Tupac because I have a different appreciation and understanding for what it was to be 25 years old. I think he was 25 years old when he died. Like, I have a much different understanding of how grown Tupac wasn't at that time. And I can see how there's these levels of grown folks who would see Tupac and have all this like optimism for what Tupac could have become. Like, I see that now, 36 years old. Like, I look at it completely differently. But the thing about Tupac is Tupac was the voice of like a very particular Black experience, this kind of post-civil rights generation experience. Now, Tupac's is colored in an interesting way because I relate to Tupac in that he's like, you know, he's the son of folks from the movement, right? So like he out here shouting out people with names like Lumumba. I got a brother named Lumumba, you know, like I know those cats. I'm very familiar with that. So like that part of his experience, and that's an interesting part of experience that leads you into the America that was developing on the in this post-civil rights movement sort of living, right? And so there was an anger, I think could possibly be tied to a sort of disillusionment that has come from all this time after being quote unquote free, and look what people still are. You know, and look, there's some people that won, but there's a whole lot of people that didn't. And so there's a desire to do right, counteracted by a need to do what you got to do. And just a fury and a lot that comes from a lot of that. And that's what Tupac really had grabbed a hold of, right? And that's why the people who like Tupac love Tupac, because they truly connect and relate to where he was coming from. And I can't really, it's not my experience. But there are probably a whole lot more people out there that grew up. Certainly a whole lot more people out there who grew up with Tupac's experience than grew up with mine. Right. And so I feel like if you achieve voice of a generation type status, which is what Tupac was for a really big number of people, then what we talk about here is a no-brainer. But here's the thing that gets me, is I wonder if voting Tupac in is in a lot of ways just like ultimately being patronizing. And the reason I say that, and I mentioned this on the radio earlier today, I don't see how you could argue that you got Tupac and that you felt like Tupac was a Hall of Famer unless you then develop some sort of respect, understanding, or even in some cases admiration for the people to whom he was so similar, the people who relate to him so much. Because I feel like if you really think that Pac is some variety of Hall of Famer, you got some real understanding of it. Or maybe you like me, right? And you just see what happens with other people. Or you just feel like Tupac is the default correct answer that you are supposed to have. I don't know. But the part of it that like gives me pause is just simply, do these people who say that they are into Tupac in this way understand why Tupac was someone to be into in such a way? Or maybe it's a problem with me that I'm looking at it too narrowly and discounting the other ways that people could find their appreciation for Tupac. I don't know. But I do kind of, you know, you kind of worry about sometimes when people are missing the point, what exactly that means. That's kind of a thing that bugs me in a lot of ways these days. Appreciate the question. Let me see what we got here. Do you think people who cited Buddy's history of pranks and anti-Black comments are missing the point in the discussion of him getting kicked off of a Delta flight for speaking Arabic? Yeah, this is interesting. If you saw it, the dude, he apparently is some variety of YouTube pranks. He is on a plane, a Delta flight, and he says that he was on the phone speaking Arabic. Flight attendant heard him and they put him off the plane. From everything I've seen, this appears to be what happened. I don't know exactly if it did, and I want to be careful because, yeah, the dude is a bit of a YouTube prankster. Apparently, he's done some anti-Black stuff. I know the folks don't really like that. He apparently, for what I've seen, to do stuff like dress up with, I don't know what the haberdashery is that we're referring to, but it makes the gentleman look like particularly Arabic, and get on a plane and, and just watch the white people flip out, which white people really don't like, right? Because that was the thing I saw is, he's fueling anger for jokes, and it's just like, you the one that's tripping though. Like, don't blame me because you're tripping. But anyway, so he gets kicked off the plane, he says, and he shows the video, and immediately the fact is brought up that he's a YouTube prankster, which I think we'd all agree is a reasonable thing to bring up under those circumstances, because it's fair to ask if he's up to his tricks, right? Like, if you act up on the plane for jokes, then I think if you wind up making a scene on the plane, it is perfectly understandable that somebody will want to check up and see, what you was on, what you was about. But it does seem that it happened the way that it has been described as happening. The thing I thought about people who were just like, yeah, you weren't even investigating, you didn't even wait for no information and and all of that stuff. If the man got put off the plane for speaking Arabic, then Delta's wrong. Period. There's no way around that. If the man got put off the plane for speaking Arabic, then Delta's wrong. And these flight attendants and people on planes, man, I do feel like this standard that just because some white person on the plane flipped out, you got to put got bothered, you got to put somebody off. I feel like that's an insufficient threshold. Like, I do really feel like this. Like, yo, I don't feel comfortable with that person on that plane. Why I got to get off the plane? Everybody comfortable but you. Why I got to get off the plane? You get off the plane. Am I right? Am I right? You the one that's got a problem. I'm the one that's got to get off the plane. That's nonsense. That's some flat out, full on nonsense. Now, as I've said many times, and I don't think that people really get me, but man, race and all that is one thing. Language is the monster. Like, language brings out just as much bad. Language is a monster in terms of making people do dumb stuff. There was a guy not too long ago, or maybe in a couple of years, I don't remember, but I remember the story, where it was an Italian dude. Like, he's fairly swarthy, but Italian nonetheless. He was on a plane. He's like a physicist or something, and he was working out math equations, and somebody saw that and freaked out, and they had him put off the plane. And of course, it was like Greek letters and stuff like that, which ain't Arabic. But whoever it was thought that must have been some Arab gobbledygook, because then they put that man off that plane. I read a story today about like Muslims and how they deal, like what they have to deal with when people are on planes. And I'm looking at that like, yo, the dude that you worried about blowing up the plane, he ain't kicking it like this dude that's sitting next to you on the plane. I promise you, he's not. But I'm sorry, man. I ain't about to be the one to sit up here and tell white people why it's okay to be scared of these folks just because of their race. And you know why I'm not about to do that? I'm not about to do that because I happen to be a member of a demographic of people who have suffered greatly throughout time, or throughout the history of this country, rather, at the hands of terrorists of a particular race. Yet somehow I walk around unafraid. Like, I do know what it's like to have to worry about, like, being the subject of some variety of violence because of who I am or who somebody else might be. But I ain't scared. And I feel like if I can walk around not scared, you can ride on the plane with this brown gentleman and you can handle those couple hours. I would also suggest, by the way, that you kind of keep track of like what flights you're on. Because I don't really feel like they're going to blow up the flight from Atlanta to Tampa. Right? You know what I mean? Like that flight from DFW to Oklahoma City. I don't think they worried about blowing that one up. Whoever they might be. I don't think that's the one that they're going to blow up. Like people be freaking out on flights that I just don't think wind up on the radar of the people who want to blow up a plane. They don't. Also, by the way, I was talking about reading the story about like what it's like flying as a Muslim and all the different things that people go through. One thing about this is very interesting is if we're clear, it's not like Muslims that really seem to scare people. It seems to be particularly Muslims who speak Arabic. Like, I think people think all Muslims speak Arabic, and I don't think it quite works that way. But it's really Muslims who speak Arabic. They get the Muslims from the Middle East, basically. And so they be seeing, like, the dudes from India, and they freaking out about them, and, like, the dudes in Pakistan, and they freaking out about them because you can't quite tell them apart. Like, there's another level of this, too, man. People in the United States got such a broad brush that they use to paint what they consider to be a quote unquote Muslim, that they just lump everybody in that, right? And so now they gonna think they all from Syria, all of them. Dude might be from Bangladesh. You about to have that dude from Syria, because that's just what the ones are right now. And I feel like they got to be the ones that's the most frustrated. Like folks from India, they got to be the most frustrated. They got to be like, yo, man, this ain't even really got nothing to do with us. Like that's not what this is. Like I promise you, we not the ones y'all mad at. But anyway, yeah. Like if the dude got put off the plane for speaking Arabic, ain't no excuse for that. Except the problem is people, if they hear someone acting on a fear that they themselves have, they will always defend the person acting out of fear because that then defends their own fear. And they never have to confront it. Appreciate the question. Let's see what else we got here. Hold on. I've often heard you say things like that you don't practice religion or you don't go to church. Are you an atheist that doesn't want to make people feel uncomfortable, or is there something else going on there? Yo, man, you're mad nosy right now. Like, you are mad nosy right now. See, this is the thing I'll tell you about religion. And I always say one thing you got to remember about me is I would absolutely say that I grew up in a Christian home, but I did not grow up in a religious home. And I say that I grew up in a Christian home because, I mean, my parents grew up in very Christian homes. Like the value structure in the house that I grew up in is very much so attached to Christianity, right? So like I don't live a life that's separate from it. And I live in the United States, which is a very much so Christian nation. But I mean, am I an atheist? I don't know. See, that's the thing about it. I don't really give that a whole lot of thought. Like, I guess to a degree, I understand why other people do, but I'm not especially curious about these things. Like the origins of the universe. We here now, bro. We here now. Like, I'm not that curious about them in a scientific sense. I ain't that curious about them in no religious sense. I'm just not like, that's just not really where I'm like dedicating my energies on these things. Like how all this stuff works in that sort of way. Nah. I'm not. I don't think about that much. Like maybe a time will come where I do, but I'm just not curious about these things in the ways that other people I think typically are curious about these things. Like these age-old questions. I don't really stay up at night giving them a whole lot of burn. Like no disrespect to you if you do. But yeah, I actually talked to a friend of mine once, and he's very, very much so a Christian, very, very like solid about his. And he kind of said the same thing about some of this, right? He just, I mean, look, is this Big Bang, is this God that made it all work? We here, bro. We here now. And that's not what it is. Like, if I find out that it wasn't God, it was actually like a Big Bang, or somehow God didn't make that Big Bang or whatever it is, I don't think I'm going to be able to get no refund. I don't think I can take anybody to court. You know? It is what it is now. It is what it is now. Appreciate the question. Let me see if we got anything else here. You know what? It's like 9:56. I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever it is. I think this will probably be the last show that we do before the new year. I kind of do our last show of the year. I typically close it in the same fashion, and I believe I would do it again, which is very important for those of you who check out this podcast, especially if you listen on audio and you're not here like while we do the video stuff or whatever. Lance Gilliam is the man that handles everything behind the scenes on this show. When we decide what day we're going to do the podcast, Lance builds up the website and puts the image up in the banner and everything else and sends out all the social media stuff. He works in the chat room, answering people's questions, sending people links on stuff that they ask for. I can tell Lance we're going to do this show on Tuesday, and then something happened on Tuesday and changed my mind, and we're going to do it Wednesday. And Lance is ready and got all this stuff ready to roll out and ready to rock on Wednesday, right? Like he makes this thing go for real. There's no way in the world that I can do this show or really a lot of the other stuff that I do. I can't do this without Lance, right? Need to get the website redone. Lance rebuilds that bad boy, makes the calls, gets everything done. So as I talk about all the different people who I feel like, you know, who feel to a degree as though when something good happens to me, it also happens in part to them. I hope with all the sincerity that I can offer you that my man Lance is in a position to feel that way, because I feel exactly as such with this. Because we've been doing this, you know, another guy, man, we've been doing this and rolling with it for a while now, and we've got this going. And this podcast is one of the more important things to me. I get it contractually protected when I make these deals. And I can't do this without Lance and the legitimate hard work and dedication he has to this and a lot of the other stuff that I work on. So I say to him in particular and to the rest of you, may you have a Merry Christmas. May you have a new year, Happy New Year. And thank you for watching the Evening Jones. We do this every week. Except I just said I'm not doing it till the new year, so I'll holler at you at some point. Lance Gilliam handles everything behind the scenes, but I just told you that. Remember, if you can't catch us live, check out the Evening Jones podcast. Subscribe at the iTunes store. Subscribe at Stitcher Radio. Check us out at SoundCloud. We're also at the Google Play Store. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Take it easy.